Week 7 is here, and luckily this last week, really not a whole lot of running back injuries. Can't say that about the wide receiver position. Puka, Emeka Egbuka, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley at tight end. We got David Njoku. Quarterback injuries, Kyler Murray didn't get the best results from an MRI last week as well. So plenty to get to today, but we have to clean up some of the previous week's waiver wire guys because we got some running back committees with some clear winners. So we're going to start this thing out over in Los Angeles. Hassan Haskins, Kimani Vidal, the clear winner by the end of the game was Kimani Vidal. What did you see out of the Troy Trojan?
The inferior Trojans from your perspective, I suppose. Look, maybe the nerds were right all along and Kimani Vidal rules. I don't know. The Dolphins defense is also complete trash, in particular against the run. Everyone's going to have success against them, but there's an inertia effect to this. He played about 2/3 of the snaps. He is clearly the better pass catcher between the two backs, and we'd expect to have more of that 3-down upside between the two. And he wound up getting most of the rushing work as well. He looked like the better player. So wound up getting, if you did have the guts to start him, a very usable performance this week. And now we get news that Amari and Hampton likely to miss more than the original 4 weeks. I suspect there's a fracture involved. So we might be looking at a 6 to 8 week timeline there. And probably what you're worried about now is less Hassan Haskins and more insert trade candidate running back. Did Vidal do enough to make the Chargers uninterested in adding a player? Probably not yet, but keep stacking performances like that, and who knows? And there's a decent chance maybe that you get him as a mid to low end RB2 for the next 6 to 8 weeks.
I see the exact same thing, especially on the Hampton news. Just it's an unclear injury, and I don't like that necessarily. So this could be longer than just the 4-week minimum for injured reserve. So this backfield definitely does matter. They made the most out of it despite not having a good offensive line. So how it played out is Kimani Vidal started, but in the first 15 plays, Hassan Haskins 8 snaps, Kimani Vidal got 7 snaps, but then they just rode the hot hand with Kimani Vidal. They gave him that designed rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown with a little sprint out directly to him that's designed for him specifically. And he ended up playing almost, I think it was 76% of the snaps in the second half. So he won this by just being the better player. And I think that's just going to be the same thing moving forward. So he ended up with 20 expected half PPR points based off his usage. That's pretty promising stuff. So he should absolutely be started until proven otherwise. And we'll get to the drop list later on in the show. But Hassan Haskins, I think he's got his work cut out. And I think I would be dropping him for some other players.
You were hoping for one to emerge. It's Vidal. Hard to guess. You cut bait with Hassan Haskins.
All right. In Arizona, this one's definitely muddier just between Bam Knight and Michael Carter. We can remove Amari DiMercado from the just inertia here, just looking at it. He leaves early. Bam Knight finishes with 11.1 expected half PPR points. Michael Carter is at 10.9. Bam Knight just has the better game because he's the one that gets into the end zone. Michael Carter ends up kind of playing like you actually predicted, where he's playing a little bit of that Amari DiMercado role. So what did you see out of the Arizona backfield? And even if you want to give us on any quarterback takes after Jacoby Brissett's big game.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'll note, the story of the game for the Cardinals offense was that the Colts are down to literally their preseason cornerback 6 through 8. Charvarius Ward gets concussed by his teammate, Drew Ogletree. Just
don't run into Ogletree. Like that is a big man.
Just trucked him in shorts and a t-shirt before the game. That's his second concussion of the year. He might miss a couple weeks. Kenny Moore is still out. Should be back soon. Jalen Jones is still out. Xavier Howard retired, and they lost your guy Justin Wally in the preseason. Bummer. So they're literally down their top 5 corners. And so they were just able to do what they wanted the passing game. I wouldn't read too much into Jacoby Brissett rules or they're going to bench Kyler Murray for him or anything crazy. But on the ground, I watched the game, of course, in full as it was happening since I'm a Colts fan. And it was pretty clear that there was a change in plans even before the Amari DiMercado injury. We get the pregame Schefter tweet. It's going to be a Bam Knight start. We didn't get that. It was a Michael Carter start. And he stays on the field for the first third down. Interestingly enough, gives up a sack that is directly his fault on that first third down snap. How would the game have changed from there? It's hard to say. DiMercado got 1 touch, and it was on a 1st and goal. He immediately subbed out. I don't know if he got another snap or not, maybe 1. He eventually gets injured playing special teams in the second quarter. And from then on, it was a pretty even rotation with Carter playing on passing downs and Knight playing just as much, if not even more, than Carter in terms of early down opportunities. I thought Knight looked like the better player of the two. I think that they should probably be viewed pretty similarly for fantasy because Carter's a bit more game script proof, is probably going to keep the long down and distance 2-minute stuff for at least as long as DeMercado's out and maybe even just consistently.
So definitely a tier down from Kimani Vidal for Bam Knight and
For
Michael
sure.
Carter at this point.
Yeah. These guys, it looks like it's a 50-50. I mean, the best case scenario is maybe Knight just takes all the early down stuff and maybe it like becomes Knight in what was the Trey Benson and then eventually Michael Carter role. And then you have either Carter or you have DeMercado in the long down and distance role. But like, I don't know. You're going to need movement and then you're still got an RB2 who's Bam Knight. It's on the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's not a great situation. Yeah, you can pick him up. I think that he's definitely in the flex conversation. If you are struggling at wide receiver, he's definitely going to project better on a week-to-week basis for your flex. So I see it the same way. I think that Michael Carter is probably still worth holding on to for another week just to see how this thing plays out. But if you have to drop him, I also think it's not that dissimilar from the Hassan Haskins situation either.
Yeah. I'll note this. It's the Packers next week, which makes Knight a tough start because you're probably looking at negative game script.
Yeah.
If he does show well, the week after that is the Dallas Cowboys. So maybe you get to pay it off in 2 weeks.
All right, let's move on to some wide receiver additions. Let's just go back to it. Kendrick Bourne just got some injury kind of insights, like reading about the PCL injury that it sounds like Ricky Pearsall has. That likely means he's going to be out once again. And then we talked about this with Juwan Jennings.
Sorry, I'm watching like a live 90-yard Bijan Robinson touchdown as you're saying this, and so my mouth just like hit the floor.
Okay, good.
Seeing this play.
Is anybody but Kyle Pitts for me right now is okay. So I'll take the Bijan stuff.
Crazy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, to reset, so Pearsall is going to be out most likely this next game. Juwan Jennings, he said that he has 5 broken ribs, and then I believe, do I have this right? Low and high ankle sprains. He makes sure to clarify. We don't know if that's the same foot, same side. Exactly. We don't know exactly how far apart these sprains are. All I know is this: he wasn't playing well, and on top of that, he was yelling with Kyle Shanahan had to be separated with the positional coach. So what I'm trying to say is Kendrick Bourne has rose to the occasion, and we have to kind of take him seriously, at least for the next week, because I don't think Ricky Pearsall is going to be out there. So Mac Jones has been dialing it up for his top wide receiver going back to even last year. And he's doing it again this last week. So Kendrick Bourne, would you start him as a wide receiver 3 this next week? Probably, right?
I think you totally can. Yeah, I see no reason why not. With this Shanahan offense, like if they just decide that you're the guy they're going to scheme the ball to, I think you can have success as long as you're cromulent. And they like Bourne. They trust Bourne. He's played really well. So yeah, if you're looking at a probably out Ricky Pearsall, who knows what's going on with Juwan Jennings. I mean, this could even have staying power. This entire team is completely banged up. Yeah. I will note George Kittle's roughly expected back this week. That probably becomes their number 1 target, but Bourne stays in the wide receiver 3 flex mix for sure.
Okay. Puka Nacua is going to be out this next game, it sounds like. Then they go into their bye week. So, and we'll see about if he comes back after that. He's dealing with an ankle sprain. That can be all of a sudden injured reserve. That can just be back right out of the bye. Who knows? Jordan Whittington is the one to kind of pay attention to. After Puka Nacua left, he played almost 100% of the snaps, 25 of 26. So next week, we got the London game. Would you pick him up and feel comfortable potentially starting him depending on your wide receiver spots? Or is it just kind of hey, this is an intriguing player that we've been kind of waiting for to pop into the limelight?
I would definitely consider starting him. I think the role that Puka plays, and I want to be really clear, Puka's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I'm not saying that anybody can step into that role, but it is a role in the McVay offense that has been very successful for fantasy. And so we saw even Whittington flash a little bit upside previously. I think specifically with a Puka injury, if he's able to step into this, he has the potential to dominate targets, especially because I suspect the plan for any team facing the Rams in the short term is going to be to pay a ton of attention to Devontae Adams. And with a full week to prepare, I suspect Whittington is going to get pretty involved in some of the scheme stuff in the game plan. So I could see like a 7-8 catch game as being a totally reasonable upside. I know a lot of my BBM stuff, if I had Stafford with Adams and not Puka, I was constantly clicking Jordan Whittington as my 18th round pick to kind of play that parlay. So I think he's definitely in play. I'm not sure I'd say I would rather have him than Bourne, because we've seen proof of concept with Bourne. But in terms of especially deeper league stuff, where maybe even Bourne's been picked up already, go get Jordan Whittington. I think he's a totally viable wide receiver 3.
He'll be definitely a lot cheaper too. So if you only have a couple dollars left and you spent your budget, I think that Whittington would be a good consolation prize for this week. I think he will be in my top 40 wide receivers for sure without looking at it in depth. And I do think there's a chance he might even end up being like somewhere in the 20s too. So that's how well the offense is going right now. And Jacksonville's been opportunistic on defense, but I do think that you can put some yards on them. Now let's go over to the tight end corner, because there's some very intriguing names. We got to go back to Harold Fannin. We've talked about him previously. He had a little bit of a lull. The Browns definitely seemed to bottom out. David Njoku was like reintroduced to the offense for a week, but then all roads lead back to Harold Fannin, because guess what? He keeps making big plays. I can post clips of him, getting his ass kicked by Aiden Hutchinson and getting his ass kicked by you name an edge rusher in the blocking department. I'll grant you that. But him as a receiver, it's pretty evident that he's bordering on like getting to the special category after the catch already. So he had another massive game here. David Njoku might miss with a knee injury. Anything else we need to hit on with Harold Fannin? If David Njoku's out, locked in top 10, don't even think twice about it, even on the Browns?
I think clearly top 10 if David Njoku's out. And, we've seen he's remained in a pretty reasonable, tight end 1 borderline role with David Njoku in, especially since the Cedric Tillman injury, because they just don't have any wide receivers. So they're playing in 12 personnel all the time. But yeah, if David Njoku's out, he's definitely in the mix. And of course, there's outs to David Njoku being traded before the deadline too. So that might make them more inclined to hold him out if there's a potential risk of re-aggravation. And B, maybe David Njoku's already played his last game for the Browns. We don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, I would just even if they want to sit Njoku just to see if Harold Fannin could, operate as a full-time tight end, just go through that experiment. It's not what he's probably going to be able to do, but just to experiment with it for a week, I don't think it's the worst case scenario either. So
I'll note this, the fantasy community has an idea of what Fannin is and isn't. I think most of the people that are iffy on his blocking are probably correct, but the Browns, I don't know if they agree or maybe they just don't care, because you look at the Minnesota game against Brian Flores, they're in 12 personnel all the time, but Fannin more often was the guy that was staying into block. He was kind of doing more of the Y stuff, and Njoku was doing more of the F stuff. So I don't know if the Browns just think blocking is irrelevant in football.
They might.
Or what's going on. But whatever it is, I wouldn't say that Fannin's blocking limitations have limited him. He's been consistently a snap rate higher than route rate guy, which is not what you think of when you think of a Kyle Pitts or Dalton Kincaid or other receivers that are in the Fannin archetype. It's actually the opposite. It's that he actually is playing higher snap rates than routes because he's staying into pass block sometimes. It's odd. But that would go away immediately if Njoku is replaced by, I don't know who their tight end 3 is, but insert blocking tight end guy.
Right. I think he's pound for pound strong. Obviously, just your weight and your density matters in a one-on-one sport like this. But I think he's actually fairly strong. I think that they're just going to try to groom him to be a miniature version of what David Njoku's been for the Browns for the last half decade. So intrigued there. Another rookie here, Oronde Gadsden, who is just a miniature version of Harold Fannin as a prospect, talking about this air raid wide receiver, tight ends, Syracuse situation from him. And he fumbles in the middle of this game, and it nearly did cost the Chargers a win here, but they stuck with him. So he goes 7 for 68 in the score, 8 targets. I thought not even before this game, we've mentioned him previously, that whenever I go back and watch the Chargers, I'm seeing it. And they talk about him pretty glowingly, and they wanted to stick with him. So they definitely were kind of hosting tight end tryouts. But if Quentin Johnston's going to miss another game with a hamstring injury, and if the ground game is going to be pretty hit and miss because of their offensive tackle situation, I've heard of worse ideas than checking the ball down to Oronde Gadsden. So have you seen anything from the youngster?
Yeah, so what they did was really interesting. He's another one of these very undersized tight end types who's kind of a tweener wide receiver tight end. And he wound up running 32 of the 39 routes, which is a great number.
Yep.
And, at first, my inclination going into the game was to be great for Gadsden because he is not really the size you'd think of as being a traditional Y tight end. But Quentin Johnston being out, I thought would get them into a lot more 12. And that was mostly true, but they did it in a weird way. Trey Harris actually led the team in snaps this week, which was surprising. And they rotated the rest of the guys through. So basically, they were in 12 a decent chunk of the time, but just with kind of different combinations of Harris and Keenan and McConkey. And, it seemed really that they were trying to do this to find ways to get Oronde Gadsden involved. He wound up being the clear second option on the day behind only Ladd in a game that everybody else was pretty darn quiet in their passing game. I think he will take a hit when QJ is back, because when he is, the only way to get him on the field is just pure 11 personnel, or they have to take one of those wide receivers off when they have a surplus of wide receivers. But it's super interesting. Rookie, looking good, role growth potential there. And I will say, after the really hot start, things have calmed down for Keenan Allen. So it seems like to me, if I was looking at this pecking order going forward, it's QJ when healthy, and it's Ladd. And maybe there is a move for Gadsden to potentially work his way into the third target by the end of the year.
I can just fast forward to next offseason in best ball. Oronde Gadsden is going to be like an 8th round pick or something insane. I just can feel it coming. Just going to be coming. And guess what? I'll probably be on board with him, because I did like him as a prospect, and they do love him.
Yeah, he's fun.
Okay. Michael Mayer, 7 targets, 5 for 50 and a touchdown. He was basically a full-time player without Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers were another game and then the bye week, or give or take.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get, so we're going to be another week with Michael Mayer. So I think everyone knows who he is. Really solid player through and through in both phases, can stay on the field at all times. Got a red zone touchdown this last week. So if you just had to rank for the next, let's just say the next 2 weeks, if you had David Njoku, if you had Mark Andrews or Hawkinson, or you name the tight end, or Brock Bowers, Fannin, Gadsden, Michael Mayer, next couple weeks here, who scores the most points?
Yeah, if we knew David Njoku would be out, and maybe you do by the time you're listening to this, I would put Fannin first there. Yeah. Without that knowledge, I guess I would go, 2 weeks. Mayer's only playing one of them because he's on bye 2 weeks along with Brock Bowers. So I'll just say for this week, it would be Fannin without Njoku, followed by Mayer, followed by Fannin with Njoku, followed by Gadsden with QJ. If QJ was to miss again, then maybe I go Gadsden. It's probably still behind Mayer, but ahead of Fannin.
Get a notepad out. Get a notepad out. You tracking this?
This is like transitive property.
SAT.
Meanwhile, the running back injury update is nobody got hurt, and if tight ends were doing 7 different versions of conditional probability.
And with that, we can just go to the pick'em lobby on Sunday morning. You can refresh, and it'll be like 38.5 yards versus 36.5 yards for all these guys, and you're just flipping coins. So pick whatever guy that makes the most sense for you and keep it moving. I do like Fannin the best, because I think for the rest of the season, he's got easily the most likely opportunity to stay relevant all the way through December.
For sure.
Unfortunately, we had the Emeka Egbuka injury. He's probably going to miss in the next couple of weeks. Most players with a hamstring injury do. Mike Evans is at least going to practice this week. Does that mean he's going to play? I don't know. And then with Chris Godwin, I'll get to him in a little bit. I feel very, very, very it's just not going to happen for Chris Godwin this year. I think that's where I'm at with this. So the hard part is we got to pick somebody for this next week to start at wide receiver or K-Dot or something. So let's assume that Mike Evans is not going to play this week, and we don't know if that's going to be the case, because this is the only opportunity I think we would feel at least somewhat confident in a Bucs wide receiver. But Otten, is it Cam Johnson? Is it Tez? Is it Sterling Shepard? Do you have any read on this one at all?
So I'll full disclosure, I'd never heard of Cameron Johnson in my life.
Have you heard of Barton College? Because that's where he went to school. And Josh, who lives in North Carolina, has never heard of this college, and it is in North Carolina. So that's not good.
Like, we were live on the Shipcast during the game, and someone was like, number 19 just scored. And we were like, who is that? And I was like, Tez is 15. So it's like Shepard's 17. We were like, I don't know. Did they have a 19? Like, someone must have looked at the wrong number. We were like, is Scotty Miller still in the Bucs?
Yes, always.
And it was like, anyway, it's Cameron Johnson, whoever that is. I think probably if I had to pick one, I guess it would be Tez. He's like the rookie. He has some upside. And he ran the most routes this week by 1 over Sterling Shepard. Both ran more routes than Mr. Cameron Johnson. So I think that might be where I would go. But it's a total crapshoot. I think probably Otten enters that conversation with all the tight ends we just talked about. He can only produce when literally everyone around him is out. But
when that is happening, he is real producing.
Yeah, he is. So it's tough. I mean, you're trying to pin the tail on the touchdown, but someone's going to produce because Baker Mayfield, man, he has no time for injury excuses. He only has time for balling. Amazing. He should be the NFL MVP right now.
Really, yeah, truly. So with Shepard, he's kind of been the slot guy. Tez Johnson is literally 142 pounds. So that is like something we have to talk about. We have to do like weight adjusted route participation here for him. And then Cameron Johnson was the 1-for-1 replacement, was not playing. And then when Emeka left, then he pops in there. So he would still be my least favorite of the bunch, just because if Mike Evans does play, I would assume that means Cameron goes back to the bench. So it's largely between Tez and Sterling Shepard. And that's between you guys, just what flavor you want, like the old reliable guy or the 142 pounder with plenty of speed. So that's
but he's getting MVP consideration for the
yes, that was amazing. That was an amazing clip. Last bit of news here. We had Callahan get fired from the Titans. Nobody should be surprised by this. I don't think anybody wanted him around. His dad also leaves. So it's a total mess. They apparently did not know who the interim coach was going to be even after firing Callahan, which is like another red flag of
was it like they did it and then someone was like, oh god, we gotta name an interim coach.
Yeah, he's like, damn it,
we didn't think of this.
Is your dad available?
Oh no, never mind.
Fuck. So yeah, somebody had to volunteer for it. It's not looking great. That said, once you start firing coaches and the season is over, you start looking at the veterans, and one of the veterans that the Titans can potentially trade is Tony Pollard. So out of necessity here, I just think we have to talk about Tyjae Spears. He mixed in. It was kind of like a 66-33 split up from his debut of the season coming off of injury. Young player on a rookie contract. Tony Pollard, he's not going to be long for this team. So Tyjae Spears, I do think that he deserves some mentions as one of the better handcuffs, and kind of how we're talking about with Kendre Miller, where he has a chance to just kind of Wally Pip the starter, but also you have the trade outs. And I think that Tyjae Spears actually has a better chance to become a starter than Kendre Miller at this point, just looking at the head coach. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints stuff, I don't know why Kamara cares so much about finishing his career with the Saints, but he does, and that's good for him. So he clearly, the organization seems inclined, I think, to care about his preferences, and so it's probably not happening for Kamara. But yeah, maybe Tony Pollard is the guy that's on the move. I'll note Chuba Hubbard would be the guy that would also make a lot of sense to potentially be on the move at this point. But Pollard would make sense. And, I had loose notes before the interim coach was named. I was like, oh, maybe they'll get like someone a little younger, more innovative. Maybe they'd be like, oh, Tyjae Spears. Like, that's an interesting player I could use more. And then I saw that the interim coach is Mike McCoy, who is like the most like dinosaur offensive.
They should just go back to Jeff Fisher. At least Jeff Fisher was like the man.
Yeah, I can't think of a more depressing interim coach hire than Mike McCoy. I think the last time he was in charge of play calling for an NFL franchise, he was just stuffing David Johnson into the line repeatedly on inside halfback dive. So I don't know how great I feel about the Titans the rest of the season, but I agree with what you're saying about Tony Pollard.
Right. You're most likely, if you're starting Tyjae Spears in the fantasy playoffs, you're probably in the consolation bracket, but you might be starting him at some point. So that's at least better than some of the other guys on the waiver wire. Quickly, I'll just go over my drop list. Not a huge list of names. By the way, when I look at trying to find drop list candidates, there are so many rostered players that are just super injured and stuff. Get rid of these guys and go find somebody else. So Chris Godwin, I just don't think he's just going to be a big factor. Even when he does come back from injury, is he going to be a part-time player? He's going to be back when, Emeka and Mike Evans are going to be out there. And I just don't see the vision for him necessarily. Son Haskins, it's going to be Kimani Vidal until proven otherwise. Tyrone Tracy, he just got completely Wally pipped. And it's beyond just the on-field stuff with Cam Scadaboo. Like Cam Scadaboo is like the heartbeat of the damn organization beyond Jackson Dart. So I don't know how he was able to pull that off, but you're not pulling the plug on that. And then also Juwan Johnson, all these guys at tight end, there's always just a new names. And with Taysom Hill all of a sudden getting like goal line package and stuff, it's just so much harder for these Saints players to actually get touchdowns here. So we can definitely do a little PPR scam from Juwan Johnson, go 3 for 50, something like that. But I think the days of him becoming like a 5 for 50 and a touchdown just kind of got chopped because of Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I don't even know that it's totally Taysom, but they seem to have figured out what they have in Rashid Shaheed too, and he's
so
down
good.
to third in the pecking order pretty clearly after he was kind of second early on. So I agree. You can cut Juwan, and I think you briefly touched on it with Kendrick too. I like him as a hold still in deeper leagues for sure. But the way we were talking about it in the last couple of weeks, taking a pretty massive hit. First off, with the Alvin Kamara more likely to stay, and then also with just the Taysom Hill tomfoolery at the goal line.
For sure. Yeah, just more of the story. There's handcuffs on better teams. So if you need an injury at this point, just pick up the player on a better team than the Saints and Giants and Titans and whatever. So, all right, that'll do it. Hopefully nobody else gets injured like the last couple of Monday Night Footballs after we log off. Yeah. But we got another game and a half here. We'll be back every single Monday. Josh and I will be back with Stats versus Film tomorrow. And Jacob's got a bunch of written work over on Thinking About Thinking. So what else you got?
We'll have the Hitchhiker's Guide up tomorrow or today if you're listening to this on a Tuesday. We'll have all of our usual programming stuff up over there. You'll see me on the various podcasts. You get the deal. And we'll see you back here next Monday night. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving, everybody.
Really? Do you guys do turkey up there too? Or was it all different?
We had turkey last night, and I'm about to have leftover turkey right now. That's why I'm in different background here. I'm back in the homeland of Winnipeg, Manitoba. So just polished off some pumpkin pie, and I have reheated turkey.
Wow.
TBD,
love to see
5
it.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful leftovers. Another beautiful thing, Underdog app right now. We're available in, I believe it's 40 states and Canada. Shout out to you guys enjoying your Thanksgiving up there. We have team picks now. We also have pick'em products. We have drafts, tons of stuff. And then obviously we'll be talking plenty of best ball once we get there. So never been a better time to hop on the Underdog app right now. Use promo code The Show. Play 5, get $100. We will see you guys tomorrow.